Okay, the other scale we're going to look at is the Mixolydian scale and how it relates to a 2-5-1. Now, as I've mentioned, if you had a D minor to a G7 to a C major, you're probably going to hear, if that's moving fast enough, you're going to hear that in the key of C. But let's say you had a progression where it was going D minor and then it kind of stayed on the G7 for a while and then finally went to C major. There's a place where you're going to tend to hear the G7 as its own key center, and that's where you would start applying the G Mixolydian scale. And we've learned the C Mixolydian scale, so the G Mixolydian scale would just be starting on G. The notes would be G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then back to G. You'll probably notice also that's a C major scale, but we're trying to think of the scales in relationship to how we're hearing. Remember that learning to hear chords or based how you play on a chord based on the key you're hearing it in is a much better way than to just say, oh, okay, it's a C major scale and I'm just going to play that over every chord that it might fit over. That's not a very good way to approach things because you're not listening to the way you hear things. You're just applying something that somebody's telling you that works. So remember that your training one note complete method, the book with CDs that I mentioned, would be a very good thing to start working on right away when you're starting this method, because that's going to really help you over time to hear how you personally hear each chord and each chord progression. And then you can start applying the scales based on how you're hearing things rather than based on some music theory thing, because music theory will help you a lot to understand things, but it won't teach you how you hear things. You need to figure that out yourself by improving your ear. So now let's take a closer look at using this G Mixolydian scale over a 2-5-1. Okay, so now what you're hearing now is still a 2-5-1 in the key of C, but now what we're doing is extending the G chord, the G's dominant 7 chord. So there's your D minor. Now here's your G. So I'm making it a 13th chord, but we're playing it for 4 measures, and then to C major for 2 measures. So the reason I'm doing this is I'm trying to put your ear into the key of G so that you can start thinking a G Mixolydian scale. All right. Now let's just start with a quick little refresher on how you would play the G Mixolydian scale. Remember, it's best to learn all these scales I've been showing you in all keys. You're starting to see that quickly now, how we've been changing keys, and it's good to know these scales. But let's take a look now at the G Mixolydian scale. So we'd have our first finger here on the 3rd fret, and then these would be the notes. Remember, you can look at the PDFs to get these exact notes. Alright, so now let's just pick a few notes out of this scale so that we can hear. See, I hear that as the root right now. So I'm just picking the G at the 5th fret, A at the 7th, and B at the 4th fret of the G string, and then the C. Another way to do this is just to play over a G dominant vamp to apply that, which we've already done. Now let me start talking about what key I'm hearing stuff in here. Now I'm hearing this in the key of G. That sounds like the root. Now we're back to C major, and I hear that as 1. Now I'm back into hearing G. Alright, now let me just improvise a little bit for you. I'm in the key of G Mixolydian. Now I'm back into C major. Remember, there's the same scales. This is all just about how you're hearing. G Mixolydian. You know, each person's different. You know, you could have somebody that might hear this G7 all in the key of C, but that's all about following the way you hear. So remember, both the scales, the G Mixolydian and the C major, are the same scale. We're really only basing this change on how you hear, and that's why developing your ear is a very important thing.